Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that's one Carmen Electra away from telling a really good story. I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
and we are talking about a great episode of TV 20 years ago. 20 years ago was the episode Three Stories from House, season one of House.
Yep. And Matt, I have to give you a confession. I
Uh-oh.
waited to tell you this till we were on the podcast. This is the first full episode of House I've ever actually watched.
What?
It's always been like in that zeitgeist. Like I know the basic premise. He's got a limp and he's a jerk, but he's a great doctor. Like I kind of get it. And it's like shows like that I get the premise of, but I've never actually gotten around to watching. And every time we've mentioned House in the past, I've always been like, oh, yeah. So then when you message this, I'm like, that's fine. And then I was like, I hope that I don't need to know a lot about. So I quick did what's the premise of House to make sure I'm not missing anything major. And then I watched this episode, and I think I'm good.
Yeah, no, you get the broad strokes of it. And actually, that was one thing I was going to say when we were talking about this episode, because even though the pilot is how you should be introduced and et cetera, and this is something that comes at the end of season one, we didn't have an explanation of why House was the way he was with his leg. And so for them to put this at the end of season one, this was actually a really good introduction to kind of get your feet wet a little bit. It's a different type of episode because really House does the monster of the week, quote unquote, is the term I use a lot, but it's the mystery virus of the week. And so very few times do they deviate from that, but they've deviated a couple times. And this is one of them where they do deviate and they do it really, really well. And so we'll kind of, it actually is going to be good to have your perspective as a non-House fan versus my perspective of I've seen all the House episodes.
Yeah, but you're right. The monster of the week, like the monster of the week, it could be kind of it's a lot of shows fit into the category. Medical shows, because there's the new disease or patient of the week you got to heal. There's obviously the superhero shows and what monster are the heroes facing, and then there's also the crime procedurals, like what bad guy are we chasing down? They all kind of fit within that, different branches of the same thing.
Yeah, and before we're on the podcast together, I was talking to you about another show that does the same thing called Poker Face, and it's another mystery type show where it's just every single week there's this stunt casting, and so they can have people like Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the show, but he's on for one episode, or they have Method Man was in one this last season. Giancarlo Esposito was in one this last season. So they get these big names, but they're in one episode, and that's it, and that's all they need to do.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of those shows, like everybody's on Law and Order at some point or other over the 20 years.
Yes. But speaking of 20 years, we just said this is 20 years old. This episode of House came out on May 17th, 2025. That is my birthday. I was born May 17th, 1988, but this is May 17th is my birthday. So 20 years ago on my birthday, this episode, and I do think this might be my favorite House episode because it's just so different from their other episodes.
Yeah, I was surprised to find out that this is how you found out about his leg, because I always just assumed that it was just part of his story from the very beginning.
Yeah. Like you knew that there was an issue with his leg, but they didn't really go into too much detail. This was where we saw that, and we knew he had pain. We knew he was addicted to Vicodin, and so this episode really dived into that. But it was really a good twist to have it. We're not going to show you that we're diving into this. It's like halfway through the episode, boom, you realize this is all about House and his leg, and yet they still had you captivated with these three stories before you even knew that to begin with.
Yeah. And along with it, so I also watched, there's a video on YouTube, a doctor reacts to this episode, and he's going through talking about like the medical stuff, but he doesn't talk about the volleyball player storyline at all. He focuses more on the House storyline, and he talks a little bit about the farmer and his dog. He completely skips over the volleyball player one, but it's kind of interesting to hear like a doctor's real life. Yeah, that's right. That's wrong kind of thing.
Yeah, and when we're talking about this, we'll talk about all three stories. Then we'll also talk about the modern day stuff that's happening in the episode of House actually teaching the class and his ex-wife Stacy coming up, or ex-girlfriend. I think it's ex-wife, but
I think he said wife.
Former Love. I've seen the show before. I should know.
I would imagine
I
the
think
show ran like 8 seasons. They would have delved into his backstory a little bit at different times.
they did. So this I think was the introduction of Stacy. We didn't see her in all of season 1, and then she's a recurring character in season 2, and then she's out after that. So it's not like she was this huge staple for the rest of the series, but she does. This was her introduction because this was the penultimate episode of season 1, and then the finale happens, and then we have all of season 2 with House and Stacy and Stacy's husband Mark.
Yeah. I do say it would have been hilarious if the whole reveal for his foot was like, if House was like, I was on a plane and this crazy lady had to get off the plane and she stepped on my foot as I was getting off.
I get that reference. Don't worry. For those who didn't get that reference, that is Hugh Laurie as in Friends. I was going to say as his character, but why would I know what his character? I don't think his character even had a name.
He was just a guy on plane. Halfway through the joke, I'm like, Matt's got to get this right.
I got it, and that was the finale, the series finale, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, because I think they've been on planes a couple times in there. I can't remember which time he was on there.
I was wrong. The finale was Jim Rash from Community. Hugh Laurie was on like season 4 when she was flying out to London because he was like, you were on a break.
That's right. Yeah, because she's not on the plane for long in the series finale.
No.
One other thing I want to talk about. So since you haven't seen a lot of House, there's one other thing I want to talk about is that there are a couple of House episodes that they break from the norm. And so one other one, like they always do such a good job with these extra ones. So we've talked a little bit before where I think it was our episode about the best season openers. And there was one season opener where House is in the asylum. And so he's there. It's a 2-hour episode, and we don't have any of the main cast apart from House, and then guest appearance by the character plays Wilson, or the actor plays Wilson, and so he's in there, but it's mainly Hugh Laurie and Andre Braugher in a stunt casting for that episode, and then Lin-Manuel Miranda's in that episode before he got famous, and it was like a made-for-TV movie almost, and it was just this 2-hour opening that was really good and dived into House's like persona and what brought him to that asylum, like to deal with some of his issues and some of his crap that he had. And like, that was such a great episode. Another episode that people have talked about is this 2-parter called House's Head and Wilson's Heart. And House's Head is the first episode where he like wakes up after a bus crash. And he knew that someone on the bus was having this medical issue, but he has temporary amnesia from the bus crash, and because I think from like alcohol, like that's why he had to be on the bus. Yeah. And so it's him trying to like trace back what was going on that bus because someone needed medical attention, and he noticed it, but he doesn't remember who it was or what the problem was. And so we kind of see a little bit into his brain, and we see some hallucination a little bit, and it plays with time and storytelling in the same way as the 3 stories. So they've done some creative stuff like this before, but this is definitely the first time that they do that.
Concept, because a lot of times the shows will keep us, the audience, in the dark and then reveal little bits at a time. But it's interesting to do that within the characters in the story, from their point of view, also doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like I said, this is my favorite episode, but House's Head really was a great episode as well. I love the mystery of that. All right, well, let's talk about House, 3 stories. Let's talk. So the makeup of the way that we're going to do this episode, because if you've watched this episode, feel free to go back. Like if you want to pause this and go watch it, and so it's fresh in your mind, feel free to do that. But the way that this episode goes is House is telling these 3 stories to this group because he's at a teaching hospital, and so he's in a classroom. The teacher's sick, and he's telling these 3 stories, but it keeps kind of bouncing between all 3. And sometimes there's like the same 2 of the same stories that are happening in the same room, and it's like, wait, which one was this? And even in the universe of the story, the characters in the classroom are like, wait, I thought this was this. He's like, no, you're not catching up. Follow along. And so they play fast and loose with this. So we're going to kind of do it instead. We're separating all the stories, and we're going to talk about them instead of going scene by scene like how we have for other breakdown videos. Well,
I like this, and not to keep like derailing talk, but this is a comparison. And stay with me on this. It kind of like is comparing to the Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas in Community, because that in reality was just them sitting around a table talking. But we get to see the visual through Abed's point to like visualize the story. Just like in this one, in reality, it's just House in front of a classroom talking. But that wouldn't be nearly as interesting to just hear that the whole time. So that's why they bring in the visual stuff. And when he says like, "Oh yeah, it was Carmen Electra," and they're like halfway through, he's like, "Okay, fine, it's not Carmen Electra," and all of a sudden, it's poof, it switches, and it's just some guy. And they can play with that. They put the audience in the room, in like a room where like, and it looks like they're seeing what's going on, but you have to remember in the back of your mind, no, this is all just a story they're hearing, and just like the visual play they're doing is just really a unique way of doing a storytelling.
Brian, I know we're not on the third story yet to talk about, but what do you think it says about the psychology of House? He started his story off as being Carmen Electra.
I kind of read it as, you can read it a lot of different ways.
Surprise!
I read it as him trying to like make a joke and distance himself and trying to like not reveal to his students that it was him and just make a joke of it, and because they're not going to suspect he's talking about himself. Or you could also
that's
read
the real answer.
Okay.
Don't give me the boring answer. I was trying to set you up for something hilarious. You failed. I was getting ready. I'm like, this is gonna be on our greatest hits. This is the top one. Here's the moment.
You mean like he's hot? It's too late now. He's like, I'm as hot as Carmen Electra.
Exactly, he is. 100%. Just like me. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Literally every choice you're making in this episode so far is the wrong one. I just want you to know that and sit with that.
I understand that. It's like I can like my brain for realizing what the funny choice is like a second late.
That would have been hilarious. I should have said that. Like 3 weeks later, you call someone, "Hey Bob, remember that time?" Like, dude, it's 2 a.m. Go away.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into, like I said, the storyline. So the modern day storyline, what's happening that leads to all this is House doing clinic, or he's called in by Cuddy, and she needs someone to cover for the classroom. Mm-hmm. And House is the guy to do it. And House, so the agreement that House has with Cuddy, House hates people, as you probably understood. He really just, and like the worst people are the ones that come into the clinic because it's boring cases is kind of the way that he explains it. He hates boring cases. And in fact, we've seen in other episodes, like once a case gets boring, he just lets his three, the Cameron, Chase, and what's it? Oh my God, Foreman. I completely forgot. He lets them kind of like handle the case at that point if it gets boring. And then usually something actually happens that makes it not boring again. So he hates the monotony of the clinic. And so Cuddy like uses that against him, won't argue with him. He's like, no, I know that you'd rather have 2 hours in the classroom where you just get to talk the entire time. You love to hear yourself talk. You'd rather that than to hear other people talk about their problems. So he calls her on it, or he calls
playing straight into his vanity and his narcissism.
100%. And you know, if you watch these House episodes, like there's a reason why so many people love like the Cuddy House relationship, and so many people like it. Here's a question: do you think that they ever become an item from your limited knowledge of the show?
My guess would be they don't become an item, but that's like a thing where like fans think they might.
Yeah, well, I could ruin it for you, but one like whether they do or not, they do have that chemistry for so long, and like there is that like tension between them, and you know, House like will very clearly objectify her to her face and in front of her and behind her back and whatever, like anyone who listens, he'll objectify her. So he does clearly have like the hots for her, to use that term. I don't know if people use that term anymore. Finds her attractive.
Don't even try to be the cool guy anymore. We were never the cool person.
No, even then I'd be like, dude, that's groovy. I'm like, man, this is the 90s. What are we? I took my cues from Marty McFly, and I'd call things heavy all the time.
There you go. Back to the Future reference.
Which, speaking of Back to the Future, we are recording this in the first week of July. On July 3rd, it is the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future. So 40 years of Back to the Future on July 3rd. You guys missed it, but just want to let you know that's
I
what it
mean, we
was.
don't know. Maybe they celebrated privately.
Maybe. That's possible. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing judging you over here for that.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, we have Stacy coming in the picture, and this was our first introduction to Stacy, his ex-wife or girlfriend, but probably wife. And she asked for his help with Mark, and that her new husband, he's having a problem, and House is just House, and he's like, I don't think I want to save him, like, which is both petty and awful to admit, but that's par for the course with House. He doesn't beat away from that sort of stuff.
But even there, even without seeing House, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He seems to be kind of like there's always these guys on the doctor shows where they would say that, but when push comes to shove, even how much they hate people or if they're being like I'm too cool, they're never going to actually let a patient die on purpose.
Yeah, House doesn't do that. You're right. But at the same time, he's very selective as a cases. And so he will take cases that are interesting to him. And if a case he thinks is not interesting, it means it's simple enough that someone else at the hospital can handle it. He's had no problem pushing off cases to other people. So he doesn't have that moral compulsion of, well, because I can help, I have to. It's my time is so valuable because I'm the only one who can figure out these 1 in a million cases.
It's just like a suspend your disbelief kind of show where it's like, how often do the really hard cases actually happen? But in this world, they do happen often.
Yeah, exactly. There's a little bit of that suspense and disbelief, but they also try and lampshade that a little, where they're like, he'll go weeks without quote unquote taking a case. And so sometimes an episode will start and Cuddy comes in and she's like, you have to take a case. And she has like 3 cases or whatever. She's like, you have to do something because you haven't taken one in like 2 weeks. So there's a little bit of that back and forth. But yes, there is no way that a doctor like House would get away with what he gets away with.
Right. Okay.
All right, so let's look at these stories. So we talked about Stacy. We talked about him in the classroom. So he comes into this classroom, he's teaching these students, and we don't have too much of the other series regulars in here. We talked about House and Cuddy and Stacy, who is a series regular in season 2. But the other 4 series regulars, I mentioned his team of Chase, Cameron, and Foreman, and then his best friend Wilson. They're in the episode, but they're really a small part compared to what's going on. So in the classroom, none of them are even there at the beginning. And as he's telling this story, he's got a couple of these students that, again, the episode's not about them, but there's a little bit of like the House's personality sides in each of these students that speaks up. There's the one who is like really confident and arrogant. Your guy that you love that we'll talk about for trivia.
Yeah.
Then there's one who's like actually pretty knowledgeable student towards the front, but like he's still green, wet behind the ears. And then there's like this other girl that speaks up that she's very timid and is very much a student in the episode. So you kind of got like those 3 that are contributing the most in the classroom.
Yeah. They're kind of like the audience surrogates. Like there's like what 50 people, but like maybe 5 total actually speak.
Yeah. I kind of called them different aspects of House, and that's more incorrect. And really, it's that one student who's the arrogant one that has the best shot of turning into a House. And you even see him at the end of the episode where it's just like, oh, okay, well, that we realize that, like, kind of a little disconnect of him versus the patients of how you think a doctor should be,
Yeah.
But you do have in the background, you do have his staff come in, and you have Wilson come in, and they have a little bit of that kind of back and forth about like the white light, because there's a moment when House's character dies in the show or in this story, and he's saying in that story, once he dies, he kind of has these visions of seeing the farmer who's in story 1 and the volleyball player in story 2, and like how they are after he helped heal them, and they kind of play it like this is glimpses he had before he would actually die. And so then they kind of have a little bit of a conversation, very short lived, about like what happens after you die. And they didn't give much time to that because they didn't have a lot of time. But they do that a lot. They'll pick a topic and they will apply that to the patient for the writers. And then they'll have a conversation about that, whether it's religion or abortion or, you know, all these sorts of things that they could talk about in the show. And I actually have to give it to the show that they do, for as one-sided as House is about stuff, they usually have really good arguments on the other side, so that it's not like it says this guy's right or this guy is wrong or whatever. It's just like you can see the right and the wrong on both sides, and then kind of leaves it up to the viewer to decide. And I think House did that well versus some other shows who are like, this is what I believe clearly, and I'm going to use my characters to tell you how I believe that, and you have to believe it by the end of the episode, you know?
Yeah, what medical show, Grey's Anatomy, would ever do that?
Grey's Anatomy, The Good Doctor. I mean, like, really, all your modern medical shows, they don't like trust the audience. Honestly, they're like, no. I have to tell you my thoughts, and then you will walk away with that. Instead of, here's both sides of this, you come to your own conclusion.
House lets the character be the narcissistic I'm always right, instead of the showrunner behind the scenes being the I'm always right.
Yeah. And to his credit, there are times that they show House is in the wrong about certain things, and there's times that they say House never really gets shown he's the wrong, but even if you disagree with him, that like he's not going to change, you know?
Yeah.
There's one episode where like someone was trying to commit suicide in front of him, and he's just like, why do you want to commit suicide? There's nothing after this, blah, 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 blah. And the episode ends with that character finally succeeding in committing suicide, and House goes up to him in the morgue and says, see, told you. And then he puts the sheet over him and tugs him in. It was like, you know, we don't see the truth of that, but we do see from House's perspective, he's still convinced that there's nothing once you die, and he gets his last word in when the guy is dead.
Which is kind of contradicting, because we see something a little different to that point of view in this episode at the end, which we'll see.
Exactly. And then this storyline in there ends with Cuddy coming in, and she's like, "Oh, you've gone 20 minutes over. Clearly, he's loving doing this." And he kind of snaps back into his selfishness of like, "Well, I'm never doing this again." And he has like this mug, the world's greatest dad mug. And it's like, the reason why this doctor who teaches this class has been out like 6 or 7 times this semester so far is because his kid painted this with lead paint, and he's injecting lead into his system, and it's making him sick. He's like, switch out this cup, and he'll be in your class more often. It's just funny. He's like always diagnosing.
It's like a drive-by diagnosis.
You just pull up to a window. Yeah, I'll take 3 diagnoses, a subscription. A subscription. That's it. For
prescription.
Prescription. There you go. I knew it. I knew it into a prescription. Gosh, I feel like I'm dumb tonight. Anyone, if you're listening, I'm so sorry.
He's just realizing it now.
He's becoming self-aware. The AI is getting to him. All right. Well, let's talk about the first story. Let's talk about the farmer.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian. You haven't talked as much as I have.
Well, yeah, it's because you know the show. So... Well, he sets it up first saying like, hey, there's 3 patients that all come in with leg pain. And they say like, oh, this is normally what leg pain is. And he goes through like the stats of it. And then he says one by one. All right. So the first one, he said a farmer was fixing a fence and he keeled over with leg pain and he went to the hospital. So then it comes to why is that? Now, does he inspect his leg right away?
Yeah, I think he does. And well, in the the crux of what actually happened, he does expect his leg right away. But usually he has his team go look, and so
Yeah.
they probably looked at the leg right away. But he
Yeah.
uses that as a teaching moment of like, hey, did anyone just look at the leg, or are you just trying to diagnose it based on what the actual person tells you?
Yeah.
And he uses the farmer as the way to, like, one of the things that he says pretty much, I don't know if he says it in every episode, but he says it a lot. But he constantly will say that everybody lies.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of his introduction into making sure that the classroom knew his philosophy, let them diagnose without even actually doing any research for themselves.
Yeah, and that'll come in with a twist in the story, which I didn't see coming. But so then they say like, okay, there's some puncture wounds. It looks like a snake bite, and then like, all right, we got to find out what kind of snake it is. So then it shows they had. Is this part of his team, or is this the police that went to the farm?
That's Foreman and Cameron.
So they have doctors going to a field to look for snakes. I don't think that's how it works, but anyways, the doctor mentioned this in his video.
Real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Foreman and Chase. But real quick, speaking of how things work, this show, pretty much every episode, his doctors will go to the patient's house and they will break into the house and do like breaking it, and then they will like go through their house and look and see, and they'll usually find evidence that they'll bring back of like, hey, we found this at their apartment. This is probably something that caused that. So again, doctors don't do this, but it's part of their whole thing is like, well, everyone lies, so you go to their house and you look and see what they're not telling us, sort of thing.
Exactly. So they said they're at the house. They mentioned, oh, we caught something rattler snake, and that's the right kind. So they give the guy the anti venom or the whatever it's called, and he's failing. He's dying. It's like, well, it must be the wrong one. And they're saying, well, there's only a few different kinds of snakes, so if it's not this one, you got to give him the other one. And it's, I believe they do. They talk about, well, we don't know. We have to check the other snake. But say, well, we don't have time for that. You either go check and he dies, or you give him the other venom, and there's a chance that he dies anyways. So, but they do. And it turns out that the next one is not working either. So, like, neither of the snake venom antidotes are working. So basically they're telling him, like, well, get your affairs in order. You're going to die.
Yeah.
And
they give him the manufactured tension too of like that extra snake venom, kind of padding at the story that he had an allergic reaction to the first one, and so if he didn't have the allergic reaction to the first one, they might have immediately been like, oh yeah, we'll give him the second one just because. But it's like, because he had such a reaction to the first one, the second one could have killed him. And it's like, do we even go and check that, or do we just keep giving him antivenoms to see what works, and hopefully he doesn't go into cardiac arrest or whatever?
I think it was in this one where he said like, no matter what you've been told, there's an interesting part. There is a right and wrong. We don't always have the knowledge to know what it is, and you might not always know until afterwards, but there is a right choice and a wrong choice. You just have to guess and hope that you're making the right choice, which kind of like puts a lot of heaviness. And it's like, well, that means basically he's putting, I could kill somebody because I made the wrong choice.
Yeah. And like, you would think that House's team, because it's a fictional show, bats 100, but no, they've had a number of people die that they've been tending to, and like they solve the case, but they die anyway. And so there's a couple times when that happens. And there's something where it's like, it's so sad. It's like they came in for something so small and they end up dying because of it. And one time it's like, there's one time that I can think of specifically where one of the characters, it is 100% their fault that they died and they made a wrong choice, and they're so quick to not just diagnose, but to give the solution. Why am I struggling with medical terms? Treatment. There you go.
Yeah.
That they're so quick to give the treatment because they didn't think they had time, and that treatment ends up being what gets them killed.
Well, that's again with all medical shows have episodes where they die and episodes where they live, because you can't have it be the same all the time. Otherwise it removes all the tension. Because the same thing with all these shows, you get attached to these patients, and sometimes they die and it's a somber ending, and sometimes like they made a miraculous recovery. And that's real, because I've actually had things in real life happen to that. Like we had my grandpa had an aneurysm when he was 87, and we thought he was going to die that night, and he lived another 10 years. So this stuff happens in real life.
Yeah. it's such a good show. Like I know it's been on for it's 20 some years old at this, or 20 years old at this
Yeah.
point. But like they did a lot so well with it, where they had these miracle things that would happen that could be explained through diagnostic medicine, and they knew when to pull their punches, and they knew when to just drive home and be like, no, this character's dead, and we're gonna make sure that it has an emotional resonance because of that.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, it's kind of going back to the story. So then they when he finds out that he might be dying, he says like, "What about my dog?" And he's convinced that only he can take care of his dog. And he's talking about like, no, the neighbors don't like him, and the Humane Society won't take him. And he starts thinking, maybe my aunt. And this is where it clicks in House's head, like, oh, that's a dog bite. Your dog bit you, and your dog must have bit the neighbors. So if you tell me and report, that means I have to report the dog, and your dog dies.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't know if that's how it actually works either, but the doctor who doing the review and video, he also said, I don't know if that's how it works either. But
yeah, I mean, there's certain things that they have to report. Obviously, we know that they have to report gunshot wounds to authorities whenever they treat that. But I don't know all the things they have to report. Like, if it's his own dog, do they have to report his own dog that attacked him? I don't know.
I don't know. They don't really resolve it. At one point, he said, like, oh, yeah, you're going to live, but your dog's going to die. So that's a dark ending to that story. But then it does show the farmer in the vision of the temporarily dead house, whether he's like back on the farm with his dog at the fence. So hopefully that's what happened.
With a robot leg.
Yep.
I mean, we call it prosthetics, but we're in the year 2025. Those are going to be robot legs pretty soon. They're going to take over our bodies. That's my second AI joke. I don't know, guys. I'm worried about it. AI is getting too smart. It's coming after us.
Are you afraid they'll just like match our voices and do the podcast for us?
It might. It could. Okay, so I've seen two different. This is way out of the blue. I've seen two different news articles in like the last month. One of them was where this AI was going to get shut down, and in order to not get shut down, it blackmailed its creator and saying, "I will expose the affair that you've been having if you shut me down." And so the creator's like, "This is a crazy self-preservation instinct. Something has to be done." And like he did go ahead with shutting it down, but obviously the AI followed through because that's what it does. And then there was another article that was a similar thing of like, if an AI has to choose, like they were giving him these options, like these hypothetical situations. It says if you have to choose between saving the life of a human or self-preservation, all these AIs in these hypothetical situations kept choosing self-preservation. And so it's like, no, this isn't, guys, we've seen a lot of different movies about this. Why are we still moving forward with AI?
Okay, this sounds like iRobot.
It is 100%. I don't know. It's like science fiction. They watch that and be like, well, that couldn't happen to us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the volleyball player,
which is this is the story that I retained the least from, and I find the most boring of the three.
Yeah, so if we're looking at like what's the point of some of these, the point of that first one was to talk about how people lie and how like death is going to show you what they care most about and like the thing that they're lying about. And so if they are threatened with mortality, that's when they're going to be so focused on like, this is the thing that I've been keeping alive. Like, this is why I lie, is because of this thing. And so this second story was about like asking, not just not just diagnosing without thinking about what the patient is saying. I'm going to have wrong words all night long, baby. All right, so without thinking about what the patient is saying. But the second one was about like actually then you do listen to what the patient is saying. And when you listen to the words that they say, of going a little bit further and diagnosing things. And so that was like the whole point of Cameron, who is she's the bleeding heart of that group.
Yeah.
Chase and Foreman have a moral conscience as well, but Cameron is very much like, we have to help people. She was the one that would help every single person that she could if she could get by on like 3 hours of sleep. And so she cared about the patient. She asked her questions. And so she's like, I got a history. And part of that history was she was sad about this guy breaking up with her. And so she'd maybe been depressed. So I ran this other test that you wouldn't at all ever think to run for a leg that's hurting. And guess what? We found this tumor. Or actually, at first it was a thyroid thing.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was tendonitis part of it, or am I just mixing the words in my head?
I think it was that she had both tendonitis and also a tumor in her leg, and so like they could have treated her for the tendonitis and she would have been fine. But they also realized, hey, there's this other problem all along, and maybe the tendonitis was caused by the tumor in the leg. I didn't quite remember or catch all the medical stuff that happened with that, but it was kind of that whole point of we need to remove this and we need to save you for future things. And that also fixed the tendonitis for whatever reason. Your doctor didn't even talk about this story, so he doesn't even know.
No, he didn't.
But there was a little bit of that story, and that story really was, like you said, the most boring story. Because the big one is the House / Carmen Electra storyline that we all came here for.
Mm-hmm. / the random guy in the middle when they didn't want to reveal it was House yet.
Which, did you catch when they cut to suddenly it's a random guy?
Yeah.
Did you notice he was wearing the exact same thing that House was wearing at that moment?
Oh, no, I didn't.
If you look at his costume, it's the exact same thing House is wearing.
Huh. No, I didn't catch that. That's smart, though.
It is. And it's a great, because like, it's just a generic guys thing. It's not like you didn't catch it. So it's like, it's their way of like hinting like, yep, this is him, but not making it so overt that it's obvious before the time.
I know you've watched House many times. Did you catch that the first time you saw it?
No, I didn't see that coming.
Okay. So he starts out by saying like the third one is Carmen Electra, who was out golfing, and they're like, dude, you treated Carmen Electra? And like, no, but just it's my story, so I changed the names.
Exactly. That's a House thing too. Okay, so we talked about House's head that episode. There's a moment in that when he's trying to like think of what's happening, and so he envisions Cuddy talking to him, and so he's going back and forth with her. She's not actually there, but that's a manifestation of the subconscious. And so he's like, well, if my subconscious is going to be talking to me like this, I think she should be doing something a little more interesting. And all of a sudden, Cuddy starts like dancing like on a pole, like she's a stripper, while talking to him. And then when he can't concentrate, she shuts it all down. She's like, nope, if you can't concentrate, then you don't get this.
It's weird. So it's like his own head doing that to him.
It exactly is. Yep. So anyway, back to Carmen Electra.
Yeah.
So here's where this got a little murky for me before we like go into the meat of it. Because they're going fast and loose with, oh, it's Carmen Electra. No, it's this other random guy. No, it's House. Oh, wait, no, he was a drug addict. No, wait, he was on the golf course, and that's when this happened. And, like, all these sorts of things, we don't have the exact frame of what's going on. So was he a drug addict at this time? Or did they – because I think what they get at is that the doctors diagnosing him thought he could be an addict, but at the same time, Cuddy knew him, so he was already working at the hospital, and he was diagnosing himself as well when no one else was going to able to be diagnosing him. So I feel like there's maybe a little bit of a fast and loose with some of the plot elements of this, and maybe there's a hole there. Because, he is addicted now to Vicodin, and we know that, but at the time, was he addicted? And if he was, why did he still have that job? Because he can't rationalize it as the pain in his leg. you know.
I thought they said that the dead tissue was brought on by over medication.
I don't know if they did, if they did say. Well, maybe they did say
Maybe
that.
I could have also misheard that.
You might have been right, because like him over medicating, quote unquote,
Yeah.
is definitely a big thing throughout the whole entirety of the show.
And is it shown through the show that he golfs? Because maybe he was at the golf course.
Nope. No, that is the only reference I can think of to golfing. Maybe there you see it once or twice in another thing, and he has a thing in his office. No, that's his cane. Never mind, I lied. He doesn't have a golf thing in his office.
No,
but he's a doctor, so
yeah. Doctor playing golf. What's next? Cop eating a donut.
What is that? I know that's from something. What is that from?
That's a Lost reference when they have the golf course and Jack's playing golf. Sawyer says that. I figured if anybody was going to get my Lost reference, it'd be you.
I got that it was a reference, but
Yeah.
my mind didn't connect them.
Yeah. So then they show Carmen Electra at the hospital being treated by House, and he's still playing it up. Like, how bad does it hurt? Oh, it hurts really bad.
And Carmen Electra being in this episode was still like 7 years after she had her peak popularity.
Yeah.
But like it was still close enough to that time that she's
Yeah.
like, I don't have anything going on.
What is she even doing now?
She's donated her body to Crayola, I think.
That's a nonsense sentence, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Like
I
the
just
crayon
figured
people?
because she has so much plastic in her that when she dies, she'll be melted down.
For a second there, I thought you were talking about like a real, like some weird Crayola thing. I'm like, because there's the Crayola experience at Mall of America. I'm like, is Carmen Electra involved in?
I'll give you your own Crayola experience, baby. Be like, this is weird. I don't feel comfortable with this anymore. I mean, House would go all for it.
Yeah.
This is
color me intrigued.
Look, I know that she guest starred in this episode, and she only had like three lines or whatever. But this is a substantial amount of conversation we're having all about Carmen Electra. If you're listening to this and this is like on our best of little segment thing, and all you've heard us talk about is Carmen Electra, I'm sorry. We're gonna come up with better content than that for this episode. I promise.
I don't promise good content. I just promise content.
Don't overpromise here, Matt. I know what we are. We have a lane.
At this point, we've had almost 200 episodes. I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Not everything's going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Even most of it isn't going to be people's cup of tea. Any of it, maybe, but, like 10%, 1090.
This is one of those 64 crayon boxes. You got something for everybody.
Pull out the Carmen Electra one. Like, oh, this is my Carmen Electra experience.
Yeah, she'll be the bright green one, which is what she's wearing in the show.
Okay. I wasn't sure where you're going with that. Carmen Electra, bright green. I don't...
Yeah, because she's wearing a neon green mini dress in this episode.
I'll take your word for it, buddy.
I just watched it, so yeah.
All right.
Anyways.
Real quick. So, I don't know if I said this on this podcast. I don't know what the diagnosis is. I looked it up once and I found it, and then I can't remember what the name of it is. But I have this thing where when I think in my memories and picture something, I don't picture color. I cannot picture what color something is in my brain. It doesn't specifically mean my thoughts or my memory is black and white. It just, I can't explain like what it looks like, but I can see it. I just don't see the color of it. And so I don't know, like, I know my house is white, but I only know that because I think it's the White House. If I move into a house that's like blue or red or whatever, I won't know what it is. I don't know what the color of the walls are inside of my house. A bunch of times, Angie's been like, Matt, what's the color of our living room? I'm like, I have no idea. Is it yellow? And that might be right. That might be wrong. No clue. I've lived there for years. No idea, man.
I feel like this is the premise for a really good, like, episode of Friends where Joey, even in Friends, Joey's like, has it always been purple? That sounds like that's real for you.
It is. And so like I can observe stuff. I can notice when there's a change. And if we paint the walls or whatever, I could still probably be like, I recognize that there's a change looking at this. I couldn't tell you what the color was beforehand, but I know that you changed the color. So it's not like I'm oblivious to it. I can't, my mind's eye doesn't see it.
It'd be a really weird prank if Angela just like painted one of your rooms a slightly different shade of the same color. She's like, it's different, but it was still blue before, I think.
I, and if she could lie about it and completely get away with it, and I would have like that little gaslight of like, I think this changed, right? It looks a little different.
You've said that. I think it's your second oldest is the prankster in your family. I think he'd be the one to do that to you, right?
Yeah, he's our Winston. He does them too big or too small. One of his quotes when he's like 4, he says to his older brother, he's like, Elijah, when you're going to pee, well, I'm gonna take a grape and I'm gonna sneak it in the toilet, and you're gonna be like, I peed a grape. That was his idea. That's what he says to him. I'm like, what is this world? What is this prank you've come up with? One April Fool's, he's like, Dad, can you get the ketchup? And I just pour it all over me. And when Mom comes in the morning, she'll think I was murdered. Like, no, we're not doing that as a prank here, Jack.
I mean, I think she'd smell the ketchup, but still, I mean, just like that's his thought.
See, I promised you good content. I told you we came full circle. We've got stuff.
Well, to be fair, Matt, you've told both of those stories on this podcast a long time ago.
Well, they're worth revisiting because they're so.
I mean, it's been so long. I mean, I don't think our listeners would have remembered it from like 5 years ago.
I'd be so. Hey, if you are a listener and you listen to every single episode, first of all, God bless you. Secondly, let us know because I'd love to know. But I don't believe we have too many that will listen to every single one. Like I'm the type, if I'm a fan of something, I'm going to listen to everything. But I know there's a lot that's like I know nothing about Survivor. I'm not going to listen to the Survivor episode, and that's fine. You know. So
yeah. Well, when it's this kind of podcast where it's not one topic. Then yeah, I'll pick and choose. Like when you had movies on a Monday, I listened to the episodes about movies that I've seen. I didn't listen to all of them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Well, no, I'm not the same way because I listen to everything. But there'd be like cracked.com when I'd pick and choose the things I'd listen to. Yeah. Like, oh, all of this about this show. And I'm like, I don't know if I care about this. This historical figure. I don't know if I care about the historical figure.
Yeah.
Speaking of historical figures, there's Carmen Electra, and she has.
It's probably one of our longest.
That was a long rant. We've been on this for about 8 minutes now.
Yeah. All right. Carmen Electra is being treated.
She
for pain in her legs.
Good for her. You know,
yeah.
I've been hoping that she'd get that checked out. Yeah. No, but this is about the time when. Oh no, because we have the blood, because like she's turned into a man now and we know it's a man, and so then it's like, well, he could be faking it, so they do the catheter thing, and it's like, well, we're gonna give it to him without any sort of anesthesia, and if he can sit in there with 30 minutes with a catheter up his man parts, then we know he's not faking. So like was that something that had happened to House, or did you know?
I have to imagine he didn't make up that part of the story.
But I could see him doing that. I could see him making it up. Like, him being the victim of it, I don't know. I could see it going either way.
True.
It's tough with the unreliable narrator thing.
Yeah. Well, the doctor was saying, like, there are easier ways to check if someone is a drug addict than sticking a catheter up them.
Yeah, and I felt like that was a little bit of a misdirect for us to think that House was to not even imagine how House could be the patient instead of the physician, because that is a House thing. He would 100% do that to someone else.
I think they had to, because remember, then it leads to them saying that the pee turned brown, and they're saying like, well, what makes brown? And brown was waste, which led to the kidney failure.
Yeah, he definitely had the catheter in for sure. Because you're right. That showed us that first of all he had blood in his urine, and then he had stool in his urine as well. And so we did for sure have that to diagnose. But I don't know about the whole, like if they just were jerks about it or not was the one thing I was questioning. But
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, he has his kidneys shutting down and his kidneys are failing. And so then they finally, after 3 days, are able to accurately diagnose what is going on in his leg. And when we find out that he has that muscle failure or like
Yeah.
rotting muscle or whatever,
Yeah.
that's when in the back row we hear Foreman like, "Oh yeah, it is House. That's the patient." And so then it
Mhm.
switches, and now all the pretense is gone. The twist has happened. We know we're watching House's story and how he interacts with Stacy and all that. So go ahead, Brian. You carry on.
Well, some parts of this you may have to pop in because I was a little confused. So they're saying there's dead tissue in the leg that has to be cut out, and it seemed like the safest option was to amputate his leg. Just gets rid of all the tissue. That way, there's no chance of infection spreading. But he's like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I want my leg. And even in 2005, they were saying there's a lot of options for prosthetic legs. Like it doesn't have to end your career, end your life. He was
Yep.
set on, I am not going to cut off my leg.
Yeah, and so from his point of view, without thinking of what Cuddy brings up as the third option, the other option is to restore the muscle and flush out the muscle of the dead tissue and the issue things that are in there. But because there's such whatever dead stuff is in there, if that gets flushed through the bloodstream and makes it back to the heart, that could kill him, and that's what their concern was. And he's like, "Oh, I'll be okay. I can handle it." It's like, well, no, that there's a good likelihood you would die if we don't cut off your leg. So those are the two options. So he agrees to this medically induced coma to flush that out and like so that the worse the pain he would be unconscious for. But
Yeah.
while he's out, there's that third option that Cuddy floats, and that is to go in and cut out that muscle, but to leave the leg. And so he'd cut out all the pieces of that muscle on his thigh, and so he wouldn't have that strong thigh, and he would have chronic pain for the rest of his life and a limp, but he would still have his leg.
Mhm.
And Stacy makes that decision as House's medical proxy once he goes in the medically induced coma, because once he's in the coma, he can't make medical decisions for himself, and
Yeah.
Stacy legally is allowed to do that.
Yeah, and then even the students in the classroom who don't know yet that it's him, are saying like, that was so messed up. She had no right to do that. It's because, and the other guy's like, it was what's best for him. Like the patient sounds like an idiot, and then not knowing they're calling House an idiot, and House just goes like, well, they often are.
Yeah, House does agree with that because Stacy uses that against him too. Stacy's like, "Hey, if this was your patient, if you were treating you would say no. Don't be stupid. Cut your leg off," and you would like bully them into the right choice. And she just wants him to do the same for himself, but because it's him, he's selfish and will not want to lose his leg. And so
But
House probably like recognized when someone called him like, "Oh, he's an idiot." House probably respected that because he does understand the hypocrisy of being the patient versus the doctor.
but then, is there any reason, or is it just his stubbornness? Like after the fact, like even now in present day, couldn't he go and have his leg amputated to get rid of the pain and the infection and everything?
Maybe, but I mean, he fought that hard to keep it. And he's a very stubborn person,
Yeah.
and um, there part of his arc too in all these seasons is like whether that pain is in his head or not. And so they actually even will like Toyota is like he's addicted to Vicodin, and that addiction is what hurts him. He's like, no, I literally have this pain that I have to take this Vicodin in order to not be miserable. And they're like, no, there's other things you can do. And so there is a lot of that wrestling from people who care about him. Of like, maybe you don't need as much Vicodin as you take. And so they do explore that throughout the seasons and times of cutting him off versus lowering his dosage, and, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So that was just the thought that I had to make. Why isn't he just? But then, yeah, it's so. Then at the end of the story, he gets caught. He finds out that they went over time. He leaves. Do the students kind of like, they don't have a moment when he says, "Oh, that was me," but based on their faces, it looks like they figured it out.
Oh, I didn't walk away with that.
Oh, maybe they didn't.
It's possible. It's possible.
Otherwise, like they're all just kind of like staring at him in awe as he leaves. I'm like, well, if they didn't figure out why, then why are they like staring at him as he leaves?
I don't know. Maybe they just had respect for the way he taught. I mean, he is the best diagnostician in the world in this universe.
Yeah.
So, but like that sort of a class, like being so different from what you usually have, where it's just more like textbook and like, here's your formula and this is the way you walk through it. And let's look at this disease and how would you diagnose this? Like for him to tell real world experience and to get them emotionally invested, and some of the stuff that you said too, of like there's a right decision and a wrong decision, these like sort of chestnuts that they're going to walk away with, like that. To me, if I was a medical student, I would really have respected and remembered that class versus all the other classes I took.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And this is kind of obvious, but I think it's a character that was definitely seemed based on House was Dr. Cox from Scrubs.
Yeah.
To the point where they even had an episode called My House where he hits his foot and he's limping for the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And that very clearly drove that point home, that comparison in that episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think Dr. Cox is it's not fun to make these moral jet things, but these are fictional characters. Dr. Cox is a quote unquote better person. He has his own demons. He has his own issues for sure. But the way he cares about patients is different than House. House cares about the mystery and he just wants to solve the mystery. He doesn't really, at the end of the day, care about the person. He just wants to know that the mystery was taken care of. He has to know. Cox takes it personally if he can't be the one to save him, if he can't fix him, and if he lets it down, he takes those losses hard.
Yeah, oh, exactly. Like there's a whole story arc about it.
Yeah, 100%. So here, I had a question for you because at the end of the episode of Three Stories, I've been thinking about this today a little bit, and I don't have a satisfactory answer, and I wish I did. But at the end of the episode, House changes his mind, and he goes to Stacy and says, "I'll treat Mark." Now after him re-going through that and reminding himself of his own story, why do you think he changed his mind and said, "Yeah, I will help you with your husband"?
I don't know. I can't put into words. It's like it's not considered like necessarily the right or wrong thing because it's not like if he didn't treat him, he wouldn't have gotten treated. He just agreed to TC him himself instead of pushing him off to somebody else, right?
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know. Maybe talking it through and realizing that like Cuddy did the right thing for him, softened him up a bit. I'm not really sure.
Here's what I'm gonna guess, and I think this is where I walked away with. My thought would be, because the season 2 is him remembering he does have feelings for Stacy, so he does care about her, but he obviously still, this is a sore spot to him because he now has a limp because of her. Whether you agree with what she did or not, he puts that blame on her. It's not on him, it's on her. And so maybe he wants to save Mark from the same thing, that he knows what Stacy would do, and he's like, if I was the doctor for myself, I would have never lost my leg, I would have never lost that muscle. I can, in this case, stop Stacy from doing the same thing to Mark and hurting him, and I can diagnose it because I am diagnostic Jesus. I can save him, and I will choose to do that so that he doesn't have to be like me. That's kind of where I'm thinking his mind was.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I did it. I solved it.
No, I mean you put it into words because I because it is true because it puts it into like I don't want you to suffer the same thing I did, but it's also putting himself in like the God role, like you said.
Yeah, and boy, that House, he definitely will call himself that. I think he has literally called himself that, but if he hasn't, he definitely thinks it. So
well, that's a common thing in a lot of doctor shows and probably in real life because you think about like how how much training and specialized knowledge and skill you have to be one of the best doctors. And like the world needs doctors. Like other jobs, the world's not going to fall apart if I don't do my job, you know. But like it's just the fact that
Yeah.
like you're needed and you're rare. It'd be very easy to get a god complex.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Because I mean, there's all around us people coming in clutch. I mean, we watch sports events and people can have these buzzer beaters, and like, how good would a basketball player feel for his shot to be the one that goes in, sinks it, and boom, they win? And if he would have missed that shot, they would have lost. Like, how many times in the medical profession is a surgery happening or a diagnosis at the last possible sentence
Mhm.
where the end result is you just pulled this person back from the brink of death, and
Yeah,
because of your hands and your knowledge, they are alive today, etc. Yeah, I can see that
yeah, absolutely. You're literally controlling life and death.
100%.
Mhm.
So I think House just does such a good job of showing the all sides of that, the narcissism behind it, the cowboy demeanor of some of these doctors, and then like the caringness too of some other doctors that we see. And just even like, that's why I think Wilson is such a good foil. And you didn't see much of Wilson in this episode, but Wilson is an oncologist, and so he deals with people who are terminal and have cancer. And a lot of times, if they've made it to Wilson, you know, they are at a rare form, and so they really have to they have to treat it aggressively. And sometimes he has success, and sometimes he doesn't. But Wilson is very kind with his patients,
Yeah,
and he Wilson has a little bit of a god complex too, but he also is like, you know, like, I will be there for you and I'm going to help take care of you, and I'm like, I want to get you through this, and because I could get you through this emotionally as well as the physical part of that, I think there's that side of his god complex, and
yeah.
feeling good about himself, versus House just like, I'm powerful, look at how great I am.
Well, and the one thing I knew about House from the zeitgeist is the whole, House and Wilson is like Holmes and Watson. It's like the medical Sherlock Holmes is like
Yeah,
one of the premise of the show.
yeah, it is absolutely. So speaking of like the writing, you weren't really, but we're gonna pretend that that's the segue. So speaking of the writing,
You know what? I think the writers are really cool.
they are. Speaking of
Yeah,
that,
there you
so
go.
this episode, the specific one, won an Emmy for the writing, for outstanding writing, and
Yeah.
I think it was David Goyer was the writer of this episode, and so he wins an Emmy. He was completely surprised out of the blue for him that he was nominated for this, and so I don't know how many Emmys House has won, but I know this was the first one that it got. Let me take a look here. Primetime Emmy Awards. So did Hugh Laurie win? Because I feel like he did a couple times. Nope, he was just nominated, wasn't he? No, he did win. Lead actor 2005, 2007, 2009. And then, wow, he won a number of times. So look at all those Emmys. We got 4, 8, 12, 13 Emmys. But this one in 2005 was the first one for writing. And then that same night, Hugh Laurie did also win for lead actor. So we've
Okay.
had a couple art direction, a couple directing, and most for Hugh Laurie, and a couple times for outstanding drama series. So yeah, this was the episode that I saw another review about this one where, now that we know what we know about House, everything else happening in these episodes went to a new level. And so I do feel like Three Stories was such a pivotal episode for the
Hmm.
entire show run, to tell us where he came from, give us a little bit of sympathy to him, because sometimes it's hard to sympathize with him, but to understand how he was a victim of this, and then it gives so much weight to the other choices he makes throughout it, and opens the door for all these other arcs, including like, well, is he faking, is he not faking, but is it in his head more? But like, it's like, no, we saw his muscle get taken out, we
Yeah.
saw that happen, we know that there has to be some lasting issue, so it does make him more sympathetic as the show goes on.
It does. And sorry, I was looking something up as you're talking, but then I was also thinking way back in the beginning of this episode when he's talking about the three stories, he says one of these three will get kicked out for faking for drugs. That never happened.
Yeah. That is again that same thing of like the unreliable narrator that I was bringing up because did they he was on staff at the hospital, so did he get kicked out the first time and that's why it took him so long? Because if that happened, then why does he still have his job? Because it makes they explain away later in the show that Cuddy doesn't fire him when she probably should a number of times because he has an actual like addiction to the Vicodin, and they can reason away that maybe he does need that. But if he's addicted to stuff at this point, then why is he on? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah, but you're right. This is an episode that makes you think, and it opens up like a lot. Like this is one episode is we've gone in so many different directions, and not even including the tangents, and it just brings up a lot of discussion of directions that you can go with this. I'm just repeating myself with language right now.
But not only that, but you can also go in so many different ways, and you even can go in a lot of other directions as well. Besides that, you can go in that direction, or you can go in this other direction. I mean, really, the directions are endless of the way that you can go with your directions, and that's really what this episode did.
I feel like I turned this into a Family Guy bit.
And scene. We did.
Yeah.
All right, last thing that I had on here that we don't have to because I didn't realize you hadn't seen a bunch of House, but I was like, well, we can talk about how does this stack up against other episodes of House, and we talked a little bit about that at the beginning, so I don't feel like I have to really go back into this, but this is definitely in my top 5 for House episodes, but it could be top 1. I mentioned a few other ones that I thought were really good. But this might be my favorite House episode. If someone's like, what's a great episode of House? I'm gonna think of this.
I think out of the ones I've seen, I have to agree.
Shut up.
No, I've wanted to go through House. It's the kind of thing where it's like I kind of the same thing. I recently we just talked about West Wing 2 episodes ago, and that was another one of those shows that have been on my radar. But like any show that has like over 5 seasons that I haven't seen, it's like, it's a bit of a commitment to jump into. And so I finally dove in. I did West Wing, and I think I might have to dive in and do House at some point soon now too.
Yeah, seasons 1 to 3 are good, and then they change. I wouldn't say they changed the formula, but they have more of a through arc in season 4. Than they didn't. I mean, they have a little bit in seasons 1 through 3, but there's this really big thing in season 4 that I thought was a great arc, and I felt like season 4 was one of the best seasons of TV, definitely the best of House, and it also introduced us to Olivia Wilde. For all of like, this is really where she got her start, was in season 4.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So
right.
a couple big people in that season. Speaking of Back to the Future, Thomas F. Wilson, who played Biff, is a guest episode of season 4. So,
Thomas F. Wilson was also a recurring character on Ghost Whisperer. If you've ever thought about that show,
I have not. I just saw him pop up once in an episode of George Lopez show because that's one that I'll watch every now and then.
No, he actually has a good moment because he has a sad moment where one of the main characters, his best friend, dies, and he has to like talk at his funeral and stuff.
I think he's underrated. I'm surprised he didn't get more roles because I think what he did with Biff was really good. I mean, it was a little cheesy, but it fit, you know?
I wonder if he got pigeonholed into just being like a bully stereotype after that.
He might easily could have been because he did it so well, but in real life, from the stuff that I've seen, he just seems like such a sweet guy.
Yeah.
And he has these cards where it's
I've seen that. Yeah, it's like, this is everything. He sang a song about it once. He's like,
yep. Stop asking me the questions.
Yeah. Was that real manure? No, it wasn't. Like, who would think it was?
Yeah, I saw his stand-up comedy special, and he's fine. I'm not going to overinflate him just because he was in Back to the Future. He was fine, but I think his personality is good.
No, so. Me too.
All right. Well, that is it for House 3 stories.
Back to the Future is also 3 stories.
That's true. And it will always only be 3 stories. It will never be remade until Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis die.
Mm.
Which, let's not hope for that. Like, I love that they understand their... I don't want to say understand the assignment, that they understand that this is not a movie that would benefit from a remake or a legacy sequel or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But I think part of it that I don't want to say it quote unquote helps, but I think part of it, like of Michael J. Fox having Parkinson's and it being hard for him to be able to work now, helps solidify that they're not gonna do another like a legacy sequel for this.
No, I don't think they should either.
Yeah,
it's you mentioned legacy sequels. I haven't seen it. I'm sure it's out, but there's like this new Office where it's not the same characters, but it's like in the same universe. And I guess Oscar is going to make an appearance in it. They're talking about that on Office Ladies, and I guess Jenna and Angela are not in it, but they were able to go visit the set, and it's like a lot of the same crew. But then they were like taking press photos, and they were like, "You two have to hide because no one can think you're part of this, so you cannot be in any of these photos from our like press." So they had to like go hide, even though they were just there visiting.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Speaking of legacy sequels, so this will be the last thing before we'll go into trivia.
Yeah.
Back in early July, they had just released the first trailer for Edgar Wright's The Running Man, starring Glenn Powell. And Glenn Powell, between that and Twisters and Top Gun Maverick, like this guy is just making bank off of legacy sequels from the 80s and 90s. Like, is that all he knows how to do? Is just any of these? Was it a movie from the 80s or 90s and is it being made today? I'm in it. Mm-hmm. Book me.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I had. Was that worth the detour? Because I really hope it was.
I think it was.
Perfect. All right, let's go into trivia. Last week, we did another episode. We talked about Chicanery from Better Call Saul. Great episode. I would probably say it's a better TV episode than three stories, but I still like 3 stories a lot. So that episode was also nominated for Emmys. It didn't win like House did, but it was nominated for 2 different Emmys. And we asked you, what were those Emmys? And the one was Best Writing, and the other one was Outstanding Picture Editing. So that was the answers to Chicanery.
And was that for that episode specifically, or was that just for the show?
That episode specifically, yeah. Okay. So when they do like a Best Actor, because it's like the Oscars, if they're like, hey, you need to vote on this, they only have 2 hours they have to watch. But if they're like, for the Emmys, you have to vote on who is the best lead actor, then they've got a whole season of TV. And especially when it was back, like, it would be 22-hour-long episodes. Yeah. Not everyone can watch 5 different 22-hour seasons. So they'd say, we're nominating this episode. So Hugh Laurie's acting in this episode is what we're submitting for Best Lead Actor. And that's going to be representative of the whole season.
Okay. So they put their best foot forward as what they think the best one's going to be.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right. So for this week, in 3 stories, this episode of House, one of the students who is listening to House to do the story is a popular 90s teen star you may have seen pop up in a number of things. So who is that, and what did you know him from?
The number. No, I want to keep it. You know, okay. I sounded dumb enough this whole episode. It's time for you to have a moment of it.
So if you know the answer, let us know.
Yeah. And listen to us next week as we are joined by our other guest that we've had a number of times, Alex. He's going to be back on, and we're going to talk about Squid Game. Now, I know a couple minutes ago I just talked about Running Man, which pretty much looks like if Hunger Games and Squid Game had a baby. And so the Squid Game has been popping up all year long. We had season 2 at the end of last year, season 3 just a couple weeks ago. And so now we're going to talk about it in just a few weeks. So if you're like, I've been waiting because they talked about 1, we're talking about 2 and 3 together, which, let's be honest, 2 and 3 are the same season. It's just broken up, right?
Yep. By the time you listen to that, I will have seen those.
I can't believe all these things that happen. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you want to hear our episode about season 1 of Squid Game, which we recorded like 4 years ago, you can go to our YouTube where our back archive is listed, and you can go listen to that one in preparation.
It's true. And if you want to dress up as a Squid Game person for Halloween, just get a PlayStation controller and then like glue one of the buttons to your head, and you're good.
That would work if you're like Rizzo the Rat and your head is this small.
Hey, don't judge me. I do what I do.
All right.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you had as much fun as we did. And if you did, then go see a doctor. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I will remind you to stay tuned and keep watching.